All right, welcome everybody to an 8 Express podcast, and we're doing our Green Book readings today. Fame and Fortune, Volume 33, B.J. Palmer, 1955. We just put this on MP3 as well. I've got an amazing artist or an actress who read this for us, and we're going to have those released around Christmas. But we're going to start reading, and I just want to start off by reading a little bit in the foreword because it's dedicated to the rights of the sick, to the doctor and the method of choice, human rights to laugh, love, and live longer. So you never know how far-reaching the things you think, say, or do will save the lives of millions of people today. And it is better to light one candle than to curse the darkness. Get the idea, all else follows. B.J. Palmer. And so, you know, what the old guys did back in the day, they read the green books. You read a passage till you feel like stopping, and then you break it down. It's not just about an epigram or a quote, but what do you get out of that quote? What does it mean, right? So that's the power of these things, and the green books are very, very powerful. Okay, so this is page 13, chapter 1. Really, it's the beginning. And I'll just start off, and then we'll just all read. Sound like a good plan?
Sounds good.
Cool. All right, chapter 1, the strongest link. The strongest link in the chiropractic chain of principles and practices is the understanding, knowledge, and acknowledgement of the practical application of innate intelligence as a working reality with an internal to all living creatures regardless. The workable and working intellectuality which generates, transmits, and expresses itself between source in brain ending in tissue cell between brain and body via nerves. When the brain generation, nerve transmission, and tissue cell expression are in normal quantity between brain and body, life is normal, function is natural, and health is a living par quality. Innate, in its infinite wisdom has set up its abode at a place and in a manner beyond each of any and all its educated offspring. Innate portion of brain thinking and acting in such manner that it and its resistance cannot be and never are interfered with in any manner. Between generation in brain and expression in tissue, there can be and usually is interference via transmission over nerves in all vertebrae, especially species Homo sapien, which is human. This interference occurs only at one area, the occipito-atlantal-axial region of spinal column between skull and backbone. It is biped, quadruped, or any other vertebra. There's a lot in those 2 paragraphs. 3 paragraphs that was, okay? Should I stop there? Let me read a little bit more. I'll finish the page.
Okay.
Nerve fibers are extensional prolongation development of brain cell continuity to cell tissue to reduce their quantity carrying capacity by interference is to reduce quantity functional activity in periphery in tissue cell, reducing its frequency of speed of action per unit of time to be that minute, hour, day, week, month, or year, permitting time to grow a functional or pathological dis-ease. To reduce functional rate of speed is to reduce its individual functional product or its comingly multiple byproducts in exact ratio of functional activity has been reduced. Its product corresponding loss of quality values in relationship with other products of other organs. You see why I have an actor to read this. It's not easy reading, and that's why, like, getting together, what did you get out of that? He leaves out a lot of conjunctions and all sorts of things, but he's getting his point across. B.J. Palmer, you know, he free wrote. He developed a spool of paper on his typewriter so he wouldn't have to change papers, and he just continually wrote. So this free form of writing It's a little difficult, but there's a lot of juice in there, right? When he did say the only place we can really see a subluxation is where we all just got adjusted just now, is up in the atlas. True subluxation. Sigafus used to say they're all or nothing nerves there. Either it gets full flow, or if it's subluxated, there's nothing coming through there properly. Everything is distorted. And when he talks about, the cell not getting the life through the nerves, that's the basic function of chiropractic. We've got a lot of, adverse things people try and introduce into chiropractic now, from scraping muscles and doing all sorts of things that really is not chiropractic. When we talk about taking pressure off brainstem and nerve at the lanto-occipital region, the transition from la cabeza to la column, right? That is that transition point, and it's the most delicate with, what's the weight of an atlas bone?
2 ounces?
All right, a couple of grams, 2 ounces?
I don't speak in thinking measure.
Okay. So there's a lot in there. You guys have anything from that?
There was a lot in there, and I honestly had trouble following it because of the lack of,
I know.
normal language structure.
That's why I think maybe reading in just a paragraph or two and talking about it, that was only one page. It felt like, I read a whole book, because there was so much juice in there. But
there was something that I liked, and it was something that I battle with regularly, is the whole, following your, trying to quiet your educated mind. And then I've been trying to do that when, in student clinic, when I approach someone's system, to try to clear my educated mind, not to focus so much on what's wrong with them, and how can I fix you, instead of how can I free you, that concept. And so it's definitely difficult to kind of silence that educated mind, so that your innate can kind of flow through you.
Yep.
So that was cool.
Well, all three of us are in different points where you're in school, you're out of school for a little while, and it's been a while for me. And it is a practice that I'm myself continually, just like you said, it's not easy, working on myself, of leaving the outside. And that comes from, and especially we were just talking about Gonstead, we're talking about upper cervical, when it gets very heady and it becomes a checklist, you're just being a technician at that point, right? But when it says, I'm allowing my innate to guide me, and some of those nuances of being able to, okay, I'm going to adjust my shoulder this way, I'm going to maybe come in a little bit more posterior or anterior, I just feel their bodies more at ease, that's connecting to innate. And when it's so rigid, that's when it becomes I think it's more difficult.
Yeah, even with the stuff that we were talking about earlier, with meningeal tension and things like that, that's not something that we're really taught in school. In school, we're looking for lack of motion, and we're constantly, I at least think, in where is their restriction, where is their lack of motion, where are they stuck, and then that's all educated mind, allowing myself to be open to assess what it is that they really need. Do they really need an osseous adjustment at this time, or is it something else? So.
Well, that's big stuff that you just said too. We could glide right by it, but the innate to innate adjustment, that it's really big. And when we are in school, find the fixation, jam it and unstuck it, right? And even in practice, sometimes you even get into that mindset. It's really just stepping out and saying, what is right? And when we were just adjusting, I said, let's just clear the atlas first, and then we'll see if anything's happening at the sacrum. And sacrum was clear. And even for me, very often I'd say, well, let me just open the sacrum up and get to it. But I feel myself, it's more honoring to ask this innate system, let me clear that and see if we still need to open the back door. You see what I mean? I'm gonna go close this window. You guys, just give me 1 second. All these trucks are delivering now.
But it's good that you're thinking of these things and asking these questions.
Oh, it's tremendous.
Oh, yeah.
And what are the meninges, right? We talk about meningeal adjustment. What does that mean? Right? What does that mean? What do you think it means? You were not at the BGI seminar?
No, I was not.
But I think upper cervical is meningeal adjusting. really. And every adjusting is with the meninges, okay? But when we talk about tonal, chiropractic is based upon tone. It's the tension in that system. We can go in deeper of where does that tension come from? Did it come from this morning sleeping on my pillow a little crooked? Or is there a connection to the past, right? Some unhonoring moment when you were a child? Yesterday when someone yelled at you on the phone, or who knows? I mean, there are millions of things that could possibly happen, and your system has to deal with it. Your meninges is your receiving point, right? Through the ears, eyes, mouth, skin, nose, all those things. The meningeal system really is your brain and spinal cord, and it says, how am I going to adapt to this moment? Am I going to hold it in for later adaptation? Or can I express it now? Get it out and you're done, right? People are all different. My wife's a little bit more hold it in, save it for later. Me, I let it out right now, right? My son's the same way. My daughter's much more like my wife. And you can see it with a little boy, he's 3 years old. And when he's done, he's like, all right, let's play with cars now. He's good. You know, with my wonderful females in my life, I got to nurture them a few more hours and, you know, butter their bread a little bit, maybe buy them flowers or something, you know. So all people are different of how these systems are. So there's, for me, I keep saying back to me, this is how I approach things. For me, if it's just a checklist, I'm not honoring where that person has come from, right? And where we're looking at, you know, function, where he's talking about, you know, the connection, the expression in tissue cell, there could be only usually is interference in the vertebra, where we talk about, you know, nerve transmission and expression of normal tone, brain and body, life is normal. If there is something interfering with innate, in reality, life is abnormal or not at ease, dis-ease, right? If someone we're holding in aspects of the past, there's no way I could really be at ease unless we bring that through the adjustment for the body to express it and integrate it. You can't forget it, right? It's part of your life. But how we handle it's the most important thing, right? Stress. Make sense?
Mhm.
You want to read next? Sure. I have some notes and things in here, whatever.
Time is the important element in destruction of normal to abnormal, health to dis-ease, life to death. Concussion of force, wherein external, invisory force clashes with internal, resisting force, wherein external, accidentally, tries to invade, and innate, internally, intentionally, tries to resist, can produce either fracture, dislocation, misalignment, or subluxation of continuous of osseous structures of bony framework of vertebra. Chiropractic confines itself to knowledge of location of, position of, causation of, correction of, production and reproduction of vertebral subluxation, only at place of its location. This process is manual, by hands only, reversing law of production to reduction. Vertebral subluxation occludes an intervertebral foramen through which pass spinal cord and or spinal nerves. Reduction in diameter and circumference of spinal and intervertebral canal or foramen produces constricting pressure upon nerves, reducing their diameter and or circumference, thus reducing their carrying or transmitting capacity, producing an actual short or shortening of continuity flow of conscious nerve force or mental impulse supply between normal source of origination, brain, and abnormal place of expression, tissue cell. When vertebral subluxation is adjusted, it being a mechanical misalignment of a segment of the human mechanical line shaft, is released pressure upon spinal cord or spinal nerves. Restoration of normal quality flow of nerve force or innate mental impulse supply takes place. Transmission between innate and function abstracts, brain body creates and is restored, producing normal quality of health. When normal quality of health reaches tissue cell, it increases functional activity, increasing its speed of action, increasing its function rate of function, increasing its product byproduct in exact ratio as functional activity of being increased, reestablishing corresponding quality values to its interrelationships with other products of other organs.
Let's stop there. Now, I know I made notes in here about some stuff, and I'll talk about it in a second. What'd you guys get out of that?
Can I see it one time? So I was reading it. It was good.
Because he talks about tone, really. When Dee Dee talked about tone, if you think about if you're tightening a string on a violin or a guitar, right, you're tightening that string and it's actually getting thinner. And they're showing now tensegrity and these different things, that is really what's happening with the subluxation, more like what Dee Dee was talking about. And now in 1955, BJ is starting to understand it. Dee Dee did not like the word reduction. They tried to say reduction before, and he corrected it in the chiropractor's adjuster. It's a subluxation. He also didn't like mental impulse. It's a vital force, vital impulse from the nerves. So that's where Dee Dee and BJ were different. He liked the vital. A mental impulse is saying, I'm going to lift my arm. Conscious, that's what Dee Dee said. He said the vital force is innate running the job. I can't think of my heart beating. I can't think about digesting my food or making new cells, right? The tension, though, is the really cool part. It's not, and he's stating it right here, it's not hard bone, soft nerve. It's an easy way for us to communicate that thing to other people. You got a hard bone and a soft nerve, what's gonna happen? But what he's really talking about, if, like a guitar string, if it's looser, it's actually slightly thicker. And the tone, bong, vibration will be at a different tone, communicating a different way. If you tighten it, it actually gets a little bit thinner, the vibration gets smaller and the tone is higher. Does that make sense? So that vibration is off, the communication is different. So what he's talking about too is the mode of transmission through that nerve. It has a smaller pipeline, okay, of communication through the nerve. Now, if we're seeing that at the brainstem, right, because he's also talking, if we want to look at it in this sense as well, we've also, for what he just said, we've got to look outside of C1. Because he's talking about tension on a nerve. There's very little happening besides the brainstem at C1, am I right? What spinal nerves come out at C1?
I mean, are you counting out the occipital nerves, the spinal nerves?
Well, occipital nerves come from
Goes up and around.
up and around from the back, right? But there's nothing coming out right at the top. Just like you have the first cervical nerve, right? The C1 nerve is coming out between C1 and C2. Am I correct?
Yes.
Right. So there is nothing above that. So we would have to have a subluxation on the nerve between C1 and C2 would be the first place if that first page that we read was correct. So he sort of contradicts himself a little bit in here. If we have subluxations in other areas, putting tension on the nerve, which is spinal nerve, right? That's where I see a little bit of conflict. You guys might see it in a different way. Do you see anything different than that?
I didn't see what you were talking about the guitar string. Like, to me, it sounded like he was saying that basically that hard bone on soft nerve type thing, and which like goes against what research has shown. So and then a lot of doctors are still saying that in their office, the whole, and I've even gone to seminars and they get up there and they talk about taking that a bone and off of the nerve. So
Subluxation includes an inner foramen through which passes a spinal cord and or spinal nerves. Reduction in diameter and circumference of the spinal or intervertebral canal or foramen produces constriction pressure upon nerve, reducing their diameter. So yeah, you're right. And or circumference, thus reducing their carrying and transmitting capacity, producing an actual short or shortened continuous nerve through mental impulse between normal foramen. So you're right, you did say hard bone, soft nerve, basically right there.
Yeah. And like it, and even the spot where it talks about by hand only. So right now we just used an instrument, which goes against the hand only concept.
Yeah.
So, and like I've seen a lot of people bashing kind of, I know what they're really saying, but like the evolution of chiropractic or evolving the art. Like tonal work is really an evolution of chiropractic, even though we were founded on tone, but the concept of tonal work is newer. And the instrument adjusting, being able to do that, it kind of puts you in an awkward place. Like you want to believe in the principles, you want to focus on the principles, but at what point are you now like crossing over?
Mm-hmm. I see your point 100%.
Yeah.
100%. I have, for a long time, I was against instruments. And I started off in Nuka because it's all by hand, and doing Grostic by hand as well. Grostic can be done by hand. Being the precision of I don't like table mount instruments. A hand instrument, because you can feel the nuances in that instrument. And I feel the same thing with an activator. I didn't like activator for a long time, and I'm not picking on activator, okay? I come to realize now it's an extension of the hand. Same with the Atlas orthogonal instrument we just used. It's an extension of the hand. If you're just using it and click, if you can palpate with those, you could feel the difference in tone. It does have what do you call that? A meter on the side or whatever. But you could feel that moment when you're right there, and you can feel that system let go through that gun and through the activator. And you can talk to anybody, any activator person. I adjust through the activator. It's not from the activator. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. The activator is an aid. And when I was in school, I remember it was Aaron Rossi's mom, who was an activator practitioner. She's an amazing, amazing chiropractor. She said, when I first was in practice, I was breaking activators left and right. I was just blowing them apart. What was happening? I can't remember if someone mentioned to her or some master might have said something to her, but she said, then I started serving through the activator, and then it all changed. And think about this, why so many chiropractors get hurt. Because they're stuck in their own instrument in their body. I know so many young chiropractors, younger than me, that have had hip replacements, shoulder replacements, all kinds of crazy things, back surgeries, because very often they're stuck in their own instrument. That's why I absolutely know that the philosophy, understanding why we're adjusting, is paramount or more important than even our own techniques. Mm-hmm. We have to know and be solid in those principles first. The technique is second. It's a close second, okay? You've got to have your skill. You've got to work on it. If your skill in delivering a by-hand adjustment, is not the mastery, use an instrument. I was against that, but now you know what? I've had amazing activator adjustments. Amazing. Clay Thompson, I was humbled to be asked to teach Thompson recently and innate adjusting, and I called Art Kaufman's wife, and her and her daughter Nicole gave me some of his notes, and he learned straight from Clay Thompson. And he used to say that this adjustment makes an average chiropractor better, mm-hmm. and a good chiropractor great, right? Because if you don't have that skill, I am not Picasso. I cannot paint a picture. My mother's a wonderful artist. I can't do it. My art comes in other ways. It's from delivering an adjustment.
Mhm.
Not everybody has that in them as whatever their skills are. They can deliver a good one, but sometimes you might need a little bit something else to improve, right? Still practicing and training is important. Even after that, for me, I can't see an end of growth, really. Every day I give an adjustment and I see like, wow, man, that was better than I've ever given. Amazing, even though I've done that adjustment 1,000 times. So yeah, we touched on some other things, maybe we got off track. Want to read next?
Sure.
We're here in chapter 2.
Long thoughts, but short chapters, okay.
Hey, that's okay. Difficult reading.
When you're reading it, it's a little bit
A
easier.
little bit. I don't know, I got tongue tied.
Time is the great element in restoration of abnormal to normal, disease to ease, death to life. Principle and practice of chiropractic is single and simple. When there is complete cyclic continuity of matter from efferent brain cell through nerve fiber to tissue cell, and a complete cyclic continuity from afferent tissue cell through nerve fiber back to brain cell, and there is a continuity free flow of normal quality of innate abstract nerve force or mental impulse supply flowing both ways throughout continuity of cyclic matter, then there would be a normal flow of innate intellectual functional energy efferently and a normal flow of innate intellectual sense impressions afferently throughout the continuity cycle of matter. Life, health, and function will be at par level at all times, in all ways, directing, controlling, and governing life. Innate alone is the only source of knowing what that par level internally is. Inasmuch as the inherent innate intelligence residing in innate brain is always normal, ready, willing, anxious to meet all internal necessities, both normal and abnormal, it is now free to accomplish its living and healthful objectives internally, without further activities or molestations on any part outside, secondhand educated being, regardless of external method thought advisable or necessary to aid nature to do its duty. That there is an abstract, mental, soul, or spiritual study of living objects is obvious. That there is a concrete, physical, corporeal study of inanimate objects is plain. That either or both have been and are the theaters of man's study of man is evident. That neither can or does exist by itself, independent of other, is consistent. That each has long been regarded as separate, divisible, disunited in his studies is clear. That students theoretically know that the two are together in living man is visible. I'm gonna stop at one page because
That's it.
that was a huge amount of to unpack.
Yep. What's your first thought out of that?
My first thought is I'm trying to unpack what he means by cyclic continuity of matter, and then he changes to calling it continuity of cyclic matter, and I'm trying to understand what he means by cyclic matter,
Okay.
rather than cyclic impulse.
Well, let's also, cyclic matter, yeah, that's pretty big. First thing I think of is the safety pin cycle, right? Open and closed. So cyclic matter, well, where does nerve end and matter begin? Or nerve is matter, but vital force, neural impulse, is keeping it in its structure and function, right? That's what life does. It keeps it working, there is an innate intelligence creating you at every moment, right? So that cyclic nature maybe is the old cells creating new cells, sloughing off old cells, innate constantly creating you in matter. Without matter, you don't have spirit expressing itself within matter. Yeah, that's interesting.
That's a tricky one, and especially the abrupt jump from cyclic continuity of free-flowing energy, and then free-flowing matter.
For some reason, what I took from it was similar to what we were talking about earlier. So if you have a traumatic event, like an emotional, like say the emotional traumatic event, and you shut down, like shutting down that flow, and how shutting down yourself with an emotional event, so having like an emotional subluxation and being able to free that and allow, so something emotional just caused a physical disrupt of flow. And when you free that to allow energy to flow freely again, not in order, not, because I didn't like the whole, and I guess that's my educated mind thinking about it, the afferent, efferent, and viewing it as pressure on nerve and all that. So I'm like, how can you take this and apply it to what's really going on? And seeing the afferent, efferent is your ability to deal with certain traumatic events within your life that is stopping you from expressing life fully. So for some reason, that's the route that I went.
Well, that's, you know what, that's the most esoteric part of chiropractic and the subluxation. And it's the hardest for people to wrap their minds around. The chemical stress is the easiest. It's huge with the vaccines right now and food stress. The chemistry from the organs, the body saying, I'm unhappy, through the, what would that be, efferent or afferent, back to the vertebra, up to the brain, causing that vertebral subluxation. Why does that vertebral subluxation happen? Same thing with emotional stress. You know, we talk about our heart being another brain, right? Or our gut being part of our emotional center. Why would we feel this through our nerve, stress, trauma, and then see that in the vertebral column, right? The breaker box, the breaker switch. I mentioned that in one of these 3 pages. We've only read 3 pages, you realize that's like heavy stuff. But how does that breaker switch blow out a fuse from an emotional brain accepting in through, you know, through the ears, eyes, and so forth, and then having a subluxation? You know, it's easy for us to talk about the car accident, you know, whatever it is.
Yeah, because that all makes sense.
Yeah.
People don't really acknowledge something like emotion, especially because most people don't want to deal with emotion. But even in the little bit of time I've been in student clinic, I've had 4 patients just break down crying inside of toll. This is in front of a bunch of people,
Yeah.
and like one of 2 were guys, and one lifted up his shirt. He's like covering his face, but that you could tell that was something that needed to be processed, that he had kind of locked in.
Yeah.
And the adjustment felt completely different. The vibration, the frequency that came off of that adjustment, I felt it. It resonated through his whole body. It was like a gong went off inside of his body, and so that's where I went immediately. Cause
You know what? Through my time really, his innate, not his physical body, where, you know, being a man, he doesn't want to break down and cry in front of everybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
But his spirit, his innate, trusted your innate in that moment, gave you exactly what to adjust in him in that perfect time for him to release that. It's not going to be out of his life experience, but he's integrating that experience. That's absolutely amazing. And even you feeling that tone being different. So you were ready that moment to give that perfect adjustment in the perfect time. It might not have happened with any other student there doing it. So that's awesome. It was probably heavy at that moment, but that's a big testament to you, that the work that you've been doing. That's incredible. Good for you. That's awesome. I've had adjustments like that myself on me. Like, whoa! I've had giggling ones where I just couldn't stop laughing, and same with people, you know. And people leaving. I had a woman here leaving the other day. She's crying, and you know, I hug her. See you later. My CA's like, she was crying. I'm like, yeah, thank God. Oh, I bet she's gonna have a great day, because I know it's gonna happen. You know, she's gonna have a great day. How you feel? What'd you get out of it?
Out of this, I'm still processing this. It's just, my first thought is he is attempting to describe very, very briefly the regular complete cycle, which I'm still working on unpacking.
You know who explains that really well? The guy, what's his name? He's a Gonstead guy from Omaha. Coca, yeah.
Yeah, he did a great job. Most of it went over the hairspray.
Yeah,
but
well, it's all in Stevenson's. It's in Stevenson's textbook.
Oh, okay, good.
That's
I've
from
been trying to
Stevenson's.
find a good source to study, and I finally found the diagram. I'm like, oh god, that's a lot.
Yeah, it's in Stevenson's. Yeah, he does a great job. He's all about that stuff. He was excellent. He was at the FCS. Were you at that one for Saturday Night Live?
Which one?
With Coca. It's Lyle Coca.
Yes,
Coca.
Oh, okay, so.
He's a Gonstead's guy. I think he's in Nebraska or something like that.
sounds about right.
Huge practice. But he was talking about what's it called? The
Regular complete cycle.
cycle. It's in Stevenson's. It's excellent, actually. You know, the name of this book is called Fame and Fortune. And where does he start off with? The deepest, heaviest stuff of really what we're doing, because you cannot have success in this. You can be a good businessman and convince people to stay in your care and trick them with, NLP, or, have the most convincing, X-ray analysis or whatever you're doing to convince people to stay. Force them and scare them to stay. But if you don't know your goods, you're going to have to use that. When you know what you're doing, you know that you know that you know, and people know that you know that you know, and they just want what you've got, people are going to stick around. For years, I just spoke in Mexico. The last time was called The Big Idea. And a buddy of mine, Carlos Celes from Puerto Rico, he was talking about PVA, or PVP, I think. This is a patient visit presenta. In Spanish, we use PVA here, but average.
Oh.
And I was a little concerned because I see a lot of new people, and I have a high volume. And I've always been a little bit concerned to do my PVA. Like, I just didn't do it. And he talked me into, just see what it is. So I did the past 3 years. And I realized I was almost nearly 30, which is very good in PVA. The average in the country is 6 to 8.
What does that mean?
Patient visit average, okay?
But
You divide the total number of people you see and by the number of new people that you see. So they stay about 27 to 30 visits for me.
Mhm.
The average is about 7 to 8 in the country, okay? So it's how people, that's a wellness practice. The other one is more of a symptom-based practice. They don't come as much, pain's gone, they don't come back.
Mhm.
So for me, I felt really good about that, because I don't do a long exam. I do an EMG, usually do a Titron, and I tell people the truth. Hey, there's a subluxation in your vertebra. I'm going to adjust you. It's going to take a while. I'll see you 3 times a week. You might get adjusted, you might not, because if you're holding the adjustment, we allow it to do its job. If you need an adjustment, we adjust you. Sound good? Any questions? I mean, it's simple, okay? We can go into long diatribes of what chiropractic, I could try and repeat what B.J. Palmer just said, but I know what he said by breaking it down and putting it into my own language, right? He's bringing 1955 language that he's been working on since he was a lad, when his father said he was but a lad when he adjusted Harvey Lillard in 1895. I think he's about 13 years old then. And he tried to tell everybody in some of his books that Didi adjusted Atlas. And then Didi was saying, absolutely not, he was just a lad, I adjusted the 4th dorsal.
I mean, even a 13-year-old kid can tell the difference between up here and between the scapula.
I mean,
in school they try to say it's because at the time there was no connection between 4th dorsal and the hearing. Like, there was no nerve, there's no way that there could have been. And so he said it was in the cervical region because there's a connection between those nerves and hearing.
And they were saying that they was a fear of the adjusting the neck and all these things. Didi said from the very beginning, I adjusted his 4th dorsal and that is it. And another friend really say, look at the word dorsal. That's the door. We're opening up the door. I don't say thoracics as much anymore since he said that. I use the word dorsals and vertebral column. Pasquale used to say, think of the word spine. What is a spine? It's a thorn and it hurts. It's a vertebral column. It's probably better to use the word backbone even. I thought, okay, words have power, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is the other thing I realized. I said this on stage at DE. What's the most important vertebra ever adjusted? The fourth dorsal. It created chiropractic. It's also the last one in the circulatory ganglia, which is actually C1 to C4, T4, okay? So that's the base of that circulatory ganglia, the nerves to the heart. What are we doing? We're opening up the heart. We're creating a vibration of love through the universe to change planet Earth, for me, to be a heavenly place on Earth. That's where I want my children to live. I want to create in Earth as it is in heaven, right? If we have a goal, if I have a goal in life, that's my goal in life. It's on my mission statement. I've come through all sorts of missions and written and rewritten and written and rewritten it, but why else would I be here? Just to get people out of pain, to be subluxation free? Why would I want people to be subluxation free? To create a better Earth, a better place for me to live in, my children, my grandchildren, and everybody else. So that's for me, okay? That's where I've come with that philosophy. Realize we can get bigger, we can look at these things deeper in every way we're looking at them, right? Break down what he was thinking, and then let's think about this. What is that? What does that word mean, right? So that's my 2 cents.
Well, here's what I would like to take away. from
Okay.
this. I'm gonna read this again, because I think it's the most important sentence on this page.
Let's hear it.
And I think it's actually the most important sentence of the 3 pages we've read.
Read it loud.
Inasmuch as the inherent innate intelligence residing in the innate brain is always normal, ready, willing, and anxious to meet all internal necessities, both normal and abnormal, it is free to accomplish its living and healthful objectives internally without further activities or molestations on part of any outside, second-hand educated being, regardless of internal method thought advisable or necessary to aid nature in doing its duty.
I know what I've got out of that. Okay, I posted it yesterday, or last week. Go ahead.
No.
That innate is always perfect. It's always 100%. It's the stuff from the outside world, the emotional, other people's stress, the chemical, the physical from the outside. Pasquale liked to call it debris. When we clear that debris, that innate is shining bright. But it's the outside world that dimmed. It's all the stuff, but it's always 100% at all times. Is that similar to maybe what you're getting out of that?
Yep.
And I got a little flack on that one from some people because I said, the subluxation, it's the debris from the outside. When we clear the subluxation, God's light within is able to shine at its brightest. So people don't like to use religious terms. I don't think God is necessarily religious, but what is innate?
I understand that a little bit. It's because of religion, God is very much a loaded word.
Understood. I understand that completely. But when
I had a really hard time with that in school, and I go to church, and I believe, and to me it's completely normal to use the word God. It just found it very difficult to use the word God inside of school, because I've used for so long, those two have been separated, and then inside of a science class, it was very difficult.
So your science class, they were talking about that, or?
Yeah, well, they mentioned innate,
Okay.
and then they kept mentioning innate, and I was like, I know what this really means. This means
Yeah.
God.
Right.
You're saying, you're describing God. You're describing the soul. You're describing God. It's very obvious.
Yeah.
And so.
That's the hard part I have when people get angry about that and still use the word innate. But you can use it as energy, I guess, if you want. If you don't want to use that term, I guess, and that's fine if that's where you are. And but that's what our philosophy has come from BJ and DD, that innate is God expressing life in the body. Okay? It's not a religious debate. We don't have to get in a debate with that. But that's what I know it to be. You have your own things. But that's what I have gotten from the philosophy of chiropractic as well. So, that's where we are with that. You guys have anything else?
No, I think that's a great note to end the meeting on.
I think that's where we should,
That's
that's,
the core of it.
because it's a lot of meat on this.
Mhm.
And what I'm gonna try and do, if anybody out there too that's gonna listen to this, I have some great translators that if we can help translate this into Spanish, will be awesome. Also Portuguese, because we want to get this to our brothers and sisters so everybody can get some juice. We're also working on getting these translated into Spanish and Portuguese, okay? So, you know, contact me. Also, you know, like this, send it to your friends, and subscribe to the page Innate Express, and we could all grow together and we can transform the world chiropractically. All right? Anybody have anything else?
Oh, that was great.
Junior, I'm so happy you're here. I miss you, brother.
Nice
And I
to
miss
meet
you too, man. All right, I'm gonna stop.
Yeah, we were talking about